running 100 miles seems impossible, and maybe even kind of crazy. And it is, but we believe in big crazy dreams. That's why we ran 100 miles. It was such a life-changing experience for us, we decided to devote this podcast to preparing and inspiring you to run your first ultra race.
Are you ready to feel the highest highs and the lowest lows? Are you ready to do what you once thought was impossible? Are you ready for your trail to 100? Thank you for joining me today here on Trail to 100, the podcast made to help you finish your first 100-mile race. My name is Jacob Bateman, and today I had the opportunity to sit down with Braden Mossbarger. Now, Braden just completed his first 100-mile race this past September of 2024. He did the Bear 100, and how I found Braden was actually at mile 51 of the Bear 100. I was pacing my good friend Ryan Head, and we kind of linked up. We're running the same pace as Braden, and I tell you what, guys, I was blown away with him out there on the trail, with how he was handling the race at that point, being over 50 miles in the middle of the night, and his first 100, and he was just pounding the miles away. But little did I know about everything he had went through beforehand to get to that point where things weren't coming quite so easily for him. So anyways, Braden had a great experience about his Bear 100-mile, first 100-mile race. And so I'll just let him tell you about it. So let's get to it. Braden Mossbarger. Well, Braden, thank you for coming on the podcast today. I am so excited to talk to you about your Bear 100 experience. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I remember hearing about your podcast on the trail and glad to finally be here.
Yeah, I love bringing on people that I meet out on their first hundreds, because obviously we shared 3-ish miles together. 34 miles. I leapfrog each other a couple times in between that as I was pacing Ryan Head, and had some good conversations. But all I saw from you was that little 10-15 mile section where I got glimpses of you. So now I get to find out how the whole race went. So excited to hear that. But anyways, Braden, what put that idea of running 100 miles in your head in the first place?
Sure. So I had never heard of ultra marathons until I was training for my first road marathon back in 2019. I got talked into running my first one when I had no goals or desires of running a marathon, and a friend of mine from home talked me into it. So
did you run much before that?
No, so I played sports all through high school.
Okay.
So I ran as just a way to stay in shape for those, but never really I ran the occasional 5K, but never really anything beyond that. And then kind of got sick of running and stopped all through college and for a few years after college. And then, I got a call from a friend out of the blue and said, "Hey, what are you doing next April?" I was like, "I don't know. That's 6 months from now." He's like, "Do you want to run the Nashville Marathon?" I was like, "No, I don't want to do that." And I was like, "I don't have time to get in shape for that." He's like, "Well, you just said it's 6 months from now." I was like, "Oh, well, you got me there." So he eventually broke me down and got me to commit to running that first one. So like most runners, when you're kind of in training mode for that first big race, you're doing all sorts of reading about it, listening to a bunch of podcasts, YouTube videos and stuff. And that's when I first heard of ultra marathons. I was like, what? People do this in one go? It's not a stage race kind of thing. And heard of the 100-mile distance. And at that point, I was like, man, that's insane. I don't think I'll ever get to a point where I can try that. But it kind of just stuck in the back of my head, this whole running farther than I ever thought people would go.
Yeah.
So then I ran that first road race and ended up loving it. I thought I would be one and done, check it off the list, move to the next thing. But
Same.
I kind of got hooked. Yeah, I hear that story all the time. People have a similar experience. So I really got hooked and just like over the years, figured I would start small with my first 50K after moving out here to Colorado. Actually did Dead Horse. That was my first 50K that I know you've done before.
Yeah.
And had a great time doing that. And then ran a 50 miler the next year and ended up going relatively well. And I figured kind of now or never. I feel like I've got some momentum if I want to give the 100-mile distance a shot. Let's go ahead and do it.
So did you know the whole time I'm trying to build to do 100-miler, or was it after a certain race where you're like, okay, I'm going to do 100?
Yeah, so I don't think in my head I was building to 100-miler. I think I kept having good race experiences at those distances good enough to the point where I was like, well, let's try the next distance up. And it just kept having good experience and enjoying the process. So I think going into that 50-miler, I had finally kind of come to the mental conclusion, all right, if this goes well, then I want to give 100 a shot. And had a pretty good day, enjoyed that race a lot, and I guess it was a month later signed up for the Bear.
Whoa, a month later. You were ready to go.
Yeah, it was a month or two later. I was ready to go.
Okay. So you signed up for the Bear. You have to sign up day of opening in order to get in, correct?
I think it sold out in 2.5 hours. So I was on my phone right at 8 o'clock when it opened and signed up.
I heard this year it was 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Oh my gosh.
Anyways, we'll get to more about, I guess, why all these people want to run the Bear.
Yeah.
Okay, so you sign up for the Bear. What were your main concerns or things like, okay, I need to focus on in order if I'm going to be ready for 100 miles? Like, what were you thinking in your training? Like, how were you planning out your training, I guess, to be ready for race day?
Yeah, so I didn't have a training plan per se that was very week by week. It was more I had goals in mind. Is I wanted to hit a weekly mileage of this number, a certain number of times throughout training, and have a bunch of 50 and 60 mile weeks, but then a few weeks above that. And it's so interesting because I was listening to your podcast you had with Matt just a week or two ago, and how he talked about his find the training style that fits you. And it's so interesting because we kind of take different approaches, but they both clearly work. I really liked to focus on the long runs on Saturdays, and more importantly, focus on the big back-to-backs. That was kind of where I put a lot of my training effort and focus in, was go out on a Saturday, have a 6 to 8 hour day, and then get up on Sunday with tired, sore, achy legs and try and get in another 15 to 18 mile day, and really get used to running on hurting and tired legs is kind of what it's all the advice I'd received from friends that have run a handful of these things. Is they always say, get that second day of a back-to-back in.
Yeah. How often do you see, were you doing that almost every weekend, or say in a given month or so, how many back-to-backs were you doing?
I was doing back-to-backs every weekend. Now those Saturday, the first day of the back-to-backs, I don't know, I probably did 10 or so that were 20 or more miles, and only a few that were, I think I did 4 that were 30 or more. So nothing crazy. I mean, I've got friends that put in just insane mileage. They'll do 35 on back-to-back days, which is just crazy to me. But
yeah.
So I had a long stretch of 2.5, 3 months where I was doing a 20 or so miler every Saturday.
Oh yeah. Did you enjoy that?
I did, because I'm fortunate enough to live close to the mountains in Colorado, so I would just drive an hour up into the mountains and just play around on some gorgeous trails, and not really worried about pushing the pace or anything, just kind of enjoying myself, and usually had a friend to go with me. So I enjoyed the training.
Yeah. No, if you can get into gorgeous terrain, you can honestly, like 6 to 8 hours sometimes isn't enough.
Yeah.
You want to see more.
Yeah,
right?
You've got the days where you get back to the car like, man, I still feel good.
yeah. Or you're like, dang, I wanted to see where, I know there's a lake up there just a little bit further. If I just could have had another couple hours.
Absolutely.
But yeah. So did you have any like surprises or hiccups in training, or did for the most part it just went pretty smooth? Like what was any battles that you came across or things that you're like, oh, maybe I need to change that a little bit?
Yeah, so I guess a couple of things is I kind of had to like come to the realization that progression in training isn't always linear. You can sometimes feel like you're going 2 steps forward and then a step back, and that's all right. Like it's not a bad thing. Like you can stack 3 or 4 good weeks together in a row, and then all of a sudden you have a bad week where your body doesn't feel up to the task for the week, and you got to cut the mileage down. And I had a hard time kind of like realizing that it's okay to like dial it back for a week here and there, just to really listen to your body. There's a reason it's talking to you, so listen to it.
Yeah.
That will pay off more in the long run than getting in those 15 miles that you're cutting out from a week of training.
Yeah.
And especially without wanting to sacrifice the following week of training.
That is such a great point. That I know when I was training for my first 100, I didn't understand at all. And there's the phrase "listen to your body" always kind of like, isn't running 100 miles supposed to be hard? Like I'm supposed to run on tired legs, right? So if I listen to my body, I would just sit right down on the trail and say I'm done for the day, So
Sure.
So I guess, how did you learn? Like, take me through like signals your body gave you that maybe told you like, hey, it's depleted, it's maybe overtrained right now. You need to cut back for the rest of the week, or cut back some miles out of this week's plan. Give me examples of what that means to you.
So, I mean, it could be something as simple as like you wake up with like an achy knee or an ankle that is just clearly not wanting to go that day, or just from like an overall fatigue standpoint. I would run 5 days a week and try and get 6 or 7 runs in a given week. And of course, not all of those runs are going to feel good. It seemed like on a normal week, I would have 2 or 3 of those 6 or 7 that felt good. And if I dipped below that, like if I had a week where none of them felt good, then it was kind of the signal to me to dial it back for a week, kind of let the body recuperate, and then give it a go the week after that and see if I could rebound to get back to the 2 to 3 runs a week that felt good.
Yeah. No, so like when the runs that don't feel good really just start stacking on top of each other, 3 to 4 in a row. And I that is a great explanation. As you say that, I can relate to that quite a bit. And I think back to some of my really heavy training weeks, when it really starts stacking together and every run just feels like a slog, then that means, okay, it's okay. Let's cut this back a little bit and let the body recover, and we'll get right back on the training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I like that. That's a great example. So race day is approaching. Why the Bear 100 first off, and then how are you feeling at that week of race as you now get everything together and it's happening, and things start to become real?
Yeah. So the reason I chose the Bear 100 is because I knew I wanted to do a mountain 100. And I asked a friend of mine, I think he's done 8 or 9 now. So I asked him, so of all the ones that you've done, like what would you say is a good like first 100 as far as like mountain 100s go? And he immediately said the Bear. He ran it 6 or 7 years ago and loved it. And so I instantly started researching the Bear. And I think the reason why I liked it is, one, it's at the end of September, so it kind of gives you I don't love running through the winter. Like I like to ski and stuff, so I don't dedicate a ton of time to running through the winter. So a September race gives you time to have a full training block. And two, it's in the mountains of Utah, but you never get super high. I think the highest point of that race is 9,900 feet, which by Mountain 100 standards is not high at all. So that was an appealing aspect. I didn't have to worry about getting in a ton of time up above like 12, 13,000 feet. And just the course, the pictures I saw looked gorgeous. And of course, at that time of year, the trees are all changing, which kind of adds to the sights.
Yeah. It's prime colors then.
Oh yeah. It did not disappoint.
Yeah. It's a beautiful, I paced for 25 miles of it, and it was nighttime, and I could even see the beauty because I saw all the colors, because your lights are lighting up the trees, and I'm like, holy cow, it's straight yellow everywhere around, But obviously in the daytime I was driving around the area and such, meeting up with my runner. But okay, so I think that's great advice for a first 100. I'd full-heartedly agree with you. I have not ran the Bear, but I've ran sections of the trail, and I'm familiar with the course, and it's a great mountain 100 for your first. So how were you feeling coming into race day? Take me to you got out to Utah, and you're pulling up there to packet pickup. What are you feeling? What's the confidence level at? Just take me to the feelings that are coming into you the day before the race.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of a combination of confidence and uncertainty, because I had never attempted 100 miles. It was twice as far as I'd ever run before. But I was confident on the back of, I felt like I had a good training block. I got a bunch of solid long runs, and that felt good. So I knew I was fit. So the certainty certainly just came from the distance, and just kind of like just the imposing nature of the unknown. So that there was some, I don't want to call it quiet confidence, but it was just, I know I've done everything I can, but still, how is this going to go? I don't really know. But I felt good from a logistics perspective. So my crew was, my parents came out, and then I had 3 friends who were going to take turns pacing me on the back half, and we had run through all the logistics of everything earlier that day. So I knew we were all squared away on that front. So there was nothing to do but toe the start line and see what happened, and just kind of trust the training and just take a run at it.
Yeah. What did you said your parents came out? What did they think of this whole thing that you were doing?
Yeah, it's funny you ask that, because they came out to the 50 miler that I ran last year, but there wasn't any crew on that race, so they kind of saw me at the start and saw me at the finish. Yeah. So I told them, like, I want you to come and crew for me. So I want you to know what you're signing up for. Like, I'm not going to be the only one that's sleep deprived. You guys are also going to be sleep deprived, and kind of ran through all the stuff that I would need for them to do for me at each aid station. They were like excited about it. They were dying to come out and do it. And they loved it. Man, they enjoyed it so much more than I thought they would. Yeah. And they were blown away by just kind of like the trail running community, and how like robust and supportive it is. My dad couldn't get enough of it. They really enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but I talked to your parents at the finish line.
Oh, did you? No, I did not know that.
I did, and I think you were out in the lake trying to, get some water, soak in the lake, get out of the heat. But so I was talking to him a little bit, and he told me he was one proud dadass. So.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, he definitely, like, I could tell they really enjoyed being out there, and it seemed like good people. So, anyways, so let's get back to the race then.
Sure.
So take me through it. Take me through those 100 miles. I know that's a big question, but I guess, how did things start for you?
Sure. So the race started really well. Like I remember that first climb in the Congo line in the dark going up to Logan Peak was just really controlled effort. It felt really good. Of course, it's nice and cool in the morning, so the temps were nice. And of course, getting up to not all the way to Logan Peak, but almost up as the sun's coming up and lighting up the valley. It was just gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
So I was kind of like really getting excited for the day, and went through the first aid station really quick since it was nice and cool. I didn't really need to refill water or anything like that. Still had plenty of calories in my pack, so that was a pretty quick run through in that aid station. And then coming down to, I think the next one was called Leatham Hollow, right around mile 20.
Mm-hmm.
That was a really cool descent. I remember we at the top of that hill, you kind of take a left on the trail and you can see way down in the distance the parking lot. I was like, oh, that's where the next aid station is. You can see all the commotion and stuff. So you're winding through just all the beautiful trees, and it's like still not super hot yet. And that section was really runnable, so I was just really enjoying myself. It was feeling really good. Legs felt strong. And then came into the aid station around mile 20. Is the first time seeing crew because they weren't at the mile 10 aid station. So it was good to check in with everyone. Had them refill my water. I was starting to get some hot spots on my feet, so I put some Leuco tape on my feet, which is a godsend. I'll never run a race without Leuco tape again. And then leaving that aid station is when it started to get really hot, and at least for me, really hot. And I don't do great in the heat, so I tried to kind of front load some hydration, and I think I overdid it a bit because I started to deteriorate early in the race. So I think that next climb started around like mile 23 or so, and just the whole way up that climb, I could feel myself starting to get worse and worse and worse, and I was starting to have like the mental battle of like, are you kidding me? Like I'm only a quarter in and the race is already falling apart. Like this can't be happening. So then get to the aid station. I think it was around mile 28, something like that. And I'm in pretty rough shape, but thank God they have ice at these aid stations. I don't know how they got these giant bags of ice to all these remote aid stations. So I waited in line for some ice, threw some ice in my hat, threw some ice in my pack, and kind of went on my way. And just the deterioration continued. I still was just getting worse and worse. And it got to the point where I couldn't keep calories down. I was starting to throw up.
Oh no.
I got really dizzy and had to sit down twice because I thought I was gonna pass out, which I had never experienced that before. I think I was just getting really dehydrated. And it even got to the point where my ears were ringing and I couldn't really hear. Like, in the movies when like an explosion happens and everyone's hearing is like it's ringing really and everything really muffled and muted.
Yeah.
My ears were like that for about an hour, which was kind of a surreal and scary feeling. People were, of course, I'm getting passed by a ton of people at this point, and I couldn't really hear what they were saying as they were going by me. So I was in as rough a shape as I've ever been. And I think the next aid station was around mile 37. And kind of that whole descent, I'm trying to battle, like, am I really going to have to throw in the towel? I'm not even going to make it to mile 50. Like, this is ridiculous. This is embarrassing. I've got friends that know I'm running this race, and I'm going to DNF without even getting halfway. This is bad. So in the midst of that, like, super deep pain cave, as runners like to call it, telling myself that like I'm gonna have to drop at this next aid station. And then about 2 miles short of that aid station, a runner, I had been passed by a ton of people that I'm sure were saying encouraging words, but again I couldn't really hear them. But this guy stopped, and he was walking with me for about 10 minutes, and I like asked him to speak up, and I could actually hear him since he was probably yelling at me, but I could hear him. And just the fact that he'd like taken the time to like just walk with me and kind of distract me a little bit, kind of helped me see like I saw a sliver of light like at the end of the tunnel of this pain cave, and I grabbed it out of desperation and just like slowly started trying to build a little bit of momentum. And came into that aid station at 37. And if according to my parents and my crew, I had no color. My eyes were bloodshot. I wasn't really talking. So I just sat down in the chair, and they were taking turns bringing me different food options. And I was more or less just kind of shaking my head or like nodding my head and grabbing stuff. And what sounded good at the time were pickles and orange slices. So I ate a bunch of pickles and orange slices and ended up having to take a long break at that aid station. I think it was 45 minutes, which I never intended to take a break longer than 15 or 20 minutes. But slowly kind of saw that maybe I can actually climb out of this hole that I've dug. And kind of had to rebuild from there. But the race fell apart far earlier than I was expecting, and it was a challenge to get out of it for sure.
Oh, I've been there, done that, man. Like to not get in your head at that point, especially when it's that early and you're like, crap. Like it'd be one thing if this was mile 80, but this is mile like 30. Like what?
Yeah.
So, but that honestly, that is a beautiful story about that guy just stopping to and walk with you for 10 minutes. Like, oh, that is beautiful. That is the sport in a nutshell right there.
I wish I'd gotten his name. He probably told me, but I don't remember his name, and I wish I did.
Oh, right. Because that little act of kindness might have saved your race that day.
Oh, I think it did. Yeah, I think it did.
Wow. Okay, so you spent 45 minutes at this aid station, which I love. I've been there, done that too.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. Okay, so it's time to leave the aid station. Okay, how are you feeling? Are you picking up a pacer at this point?
Yeah, so I wasn't planning on having a pacer start until mile 51. I wanted to do the first half by myself, but I knew that I was hurting and needing some assistance, so I did. Thank God I've got a friend that was only expecting to do 10 miles, but signed up to do 24 when I needed it. So he started early and left the mile 37 aid station with me. And yeah, it's leaving that aid station. It was still hot, but I'd gotten finally enough fluids in to where the nausea had gone away. I could hear again, and everything was starting to kind of come back together. And I think there was a climb leaving that aid station that was moving pretty well. Certainly not breaking any speed records, but was moving well. And by the time we kind of crested that climb, was able to run that next descent, which it felt good to be back in a place where I could actually run again.
Yeah. Yeah. And then at that point you're coming into the night, correct?
Yeah. So I think night I was already multiple hours behind plan because of this whole situation. So I think leaving the aid station at mile 44, the sun was setting. Yeah. So I had gotten to one more aid station in the daylight. And then starting that next big climb out of 44, the sun, like the first mile or so was when the sun had gone down, and then you're in the bubble of your headlamp.
Yeah. So what was the mindset going into the night at this point as you're starting to climb out of one pain cave and yeah, how did the night go?
Oh, I crushed the night because I climbed out of what I thought was going to be my demise. So I was like fully rejuvenated. I think the first thing I said coming into the aid station at mile 44 to like my parents and my crew, I said, we're back in the fight. Like I felt good again.
I love it.
That was a quick stop at that aid station. Just like grabbed a long sleeve shirt since I knew the temps were going to drop, grabbed a headlamp, and then kind of attacked that first hill. And for the first time since like the first 15 or 20 miles, I felt like I was charging again, not just like surviving, but charging. So the night actually went really, really well. I think I went from mile 44 to almost like 70 without being passed by anybody, I don't think, just because I had my like I had fallen apart already and was rebounding, whereas a lot of people are crashing during the night and going through what I had gone through earlier. So I kind of got mine out of the way early, and I felt like, oh, maybe this is like actually gonna end up being a good thing because I've gotten that out of the way. Now I can just focus on getting down the trail again. And I really enjoyed the night because I felt so rejuvenated that like I couldn't believe I climbed out of that hole. I thought I was going to be done. And of course, you've got company at this point. You've got pacers, so it's more fun to run with your friends. So I've, of course, having conversation the whole way. And then I think ran into you and Ryan leaving the mile 51 aid station, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I felt good. I felt good at that point.
I was so impressed with, like, when I started talking to you, I was just, I don't know, when I get out there, I get in some of my moods where I'm just yabbering at whoever. And I started talking to you. You guys were behind us at that point and just kind of rolling our pace. And like your voice, your spunk that you had, I was like, I thought you were the pacer at first because I'm like, normally someone 50 miles in and they're going into the night, you know, it's like midnight-ish, I think, or somewhere around there, or I don't know, 10 p.m., 11, midnight. And, you know, most of the time people are starting to drag at that point and be like, oh, it's going to be a long night. I'm just going to try to make it through. But you were spunky. You were holding conversation with me. You were talking way more than your pacer was talking. So anyways, I was impressed. I was like, dang, I'm like, that guy's going to finish, you know? And then at one point you ended up passing us. And we kind of said our sayonara. I think I saw you at another aid station briefly. But you were cruising and I was so impressed, especially that it was your first.
Yeah, I couldn't have been more pleased with how the night went. I felt really good through the whole night. And I don't think I hit another low point until coming into the aid station at mile, I think it's 74 or 75. And even that low point was nowhere near as low as the one I'd already gotten through. So the night really couldn't have gone any better.
Yeah. So what was going on at that 75-mile aid station?
Yeah, you know, just another lull in energy where, of course, there's peaks and valleys of energy, and that just happened to be a low one. My feet and ankles were really starting to hurt by that point. And the sun was starting to rise, so it was kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm about to do this for it's a whole new day and I'm still doing this. And like
I've been going a long time.
Yeah, I've been going a long time. This is the second sunrise I've seen since the race started. And like the feet are they're not torn up. Like I somehow came through with no blisters, which I couldn't believe, but they were just like, my feet were wrecked, knees, ankles, everything. So it was just like I was a ball of pain rolling into the mile 75 aid station. Yeah. But still, I was in good spirits. Like, that wasn't an issue, fortunately. And of course, my mom, being my mom, made a point to take a picture of me at every aid station. And her favorite one is the one of me at mile 75, because I'm like sitting by the fire pit with a big old grin on my face, just kind of trying to get off my feet for 10 minutes and then keep on moving.
Yeah. So how was that last 25?
Yeah, so that was my friend Caitlin left that aid station with me, and she took me all the way to the finish. And was slow going for the first, I don't remember how many miles it was. I was walking at a pretty good clip, but not a ton of running at this point. But still trying to take advantage of the cooler temps because I knew it was going to get hot again. And as evidenced by the day before, don't do great in the heat. So I was trying to kind of get as many miles as I could in while the weather was still in my favor. And I don't think it got hot again until there's an aid station between 85 and 90. I don't remember what number it was, but that's where it started to get hot. I remember that aid station, there was no shade anywhere. Like they had some tents set up, but they were like completely occupied by like grills and stuff. So
Yeah.
there's no shade to be found. So I'm sitting in a chair, and my mom is standing behind me holding her sun hat over my head to try and give me some shade.
What a mom.
Yeah, right? Mom's for the win.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to like feel the heat again and starting to worry about like, am I going to have another incident like I had the day before? Fortunately, I didn't, but was certainly starting to feel it. And then coming into the last aid station, I believe, is at mile 92. And I was really starting, of course, how could you not be really feeling the pain at that point? But I knew I was going to finish, was in no danger of cutoff. But it was hot again. But to anyone familiar with the course for the Bear, I by no means memorized the course, but I knew that the steepest climb is mile 92 to 93, which is just cruel. But it's just the way it goes sometimes. I think it's 1 mile, and I think it's something like 850 feet of gain. So it's just straight up. So I knew that was coming. So sitting in that aid station, actually, it's funny. I knew it was time to leave that aid station when my dad and another friend of mine were refilling my water reservoir. One of them was like scooping in some electrolytes, and a bee landed on my dad's hand, and he swatted it off, and it landed on my leg and stung me. And I think I just made I made a grunt. I didn't really like say much. I was like, oh, that bee just stung me. And I was like, all right, it's time to go. Let's keep moving. So that was kind of the cue to leave the aid station. And
you know you're 90 miles into a race when a bee stings you and you don't even really care.
Yeah. I think I grunted a little bit, and I was like, all right, let's just go.
Yeah.
So that next climb started, and I remember I pulled the brim of my hat down and just stared at my pacer's feet in front of me. I didn't want to look up because I knew what I would see. I didn't want to see how steep it was, and just kind of plugged away, staring at the bottom of her shoes.
Wow. That is, I didn't know about that 800-foot climb there.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
It sounds like a little bit of a soul sucker.
Oh yeah, it is. There's several struggling individuals on that stretch of the course for sure. Yeah, I passed a few that were. Fortunately, I was in better shape then. Like they were really, really hurting, and I don't know. I think it was just a desire to be done. Maybe some adrenaline from the bee sting. I don't know. I was just ready to get that climb over with. Yeah.
So what was it like coming across that finish line?
Yeah. So that was, of course, like that's the feeling I've gotten addicted to, is the crossing the finish line feeling. And that last half mile was the easiest half mile I think I ran the whole race, because you could see the flags for the finish. I knew I was actually going to finish this thing that had dominated my every thought for 6 months. So it was, I mean, of course, it's kind of hard to put into words like how good of a feeling it is. I got a little emotional when I crossed the line, when the race director's handing you the belt buckle and congratulating you. It's kind of hard not to get emotional. I was, of course, super pleased with the race. It obviously did not go to plan, but like looking back on it, I wouldn't change a thing about it. I'm glad it went the way it went. I'm glad I had the blow up early and figured out a way to kind of rebound from it, and was just grateful to actually cross the finish line. Whereas, I don't know, 12 hours earlier, I wasn't sure if I was going to.
Everything you share just has me reminiscent about my previous hundreds, and I think kind of your big theme with this race has been like the whole entering into the pain cave early and figuring out that you don't have to stay in the pain cave, and as long as you keep addressing your issues as best as you can and keep moving forward, that things will get better. And that's something that I think a lot of us don't ever realize until you're in the moment. With me, it happened at mile 60 on my first 100. And at that point, I was like, well, I'm done. No way I'm going 40 more miles like this. But luckily, I had friends and family who wouldn't let me quit. And I figured out the same thing. Like, they're about mile 75-ish. I really started to come out of it strong, and I'm like, whoa, holy cow. Like, just because it goes dark doesn't mean it has to stay dark. So
that's a good way to put it. I think there's always a way out is kind of my takeaway, is no matter what kind of, like, how bad you're feeling, if you just keep moving forward, addressing one problem at a time, eventually it will get better. It could be a 1 mile, it could be 10 miles. You just got to keep moving to figure it out.
Yeah. So looking back at your training, what's something you did in your training that you feel really helped you on race day?
Yeah, I think the second day of those back-to-backs really helped. I had gotten really used to running on sore, tired, achy legs, and of course that's unavoidable in a 100-miler. So that feeling of like the legs really hurting but having to keep moving wasn't new. I was used to it by that point. So I think that was a big help. And kind of the other thing in training is, of course it sucks when it happens, but I look to have one good bonk in a training session where during some long run, I kind of want it to fall apart, just as a reminder that like you can figure it out. You can get through it, because invariably it's going to happen on race day. So if you had your bonk during your training block, you're like, I've been here, done this. I can troubleshoot. I can make it out. And I did. I got my bunk out of the way like a month and a half before the race, which is kind of perfect time. If you can pick a time to have a bonk in your training block, I think it's like 6 weeks out. There's enough time to kind of rebound from it and kind of build back that confidence. So I think the second day of the back-to-backs and having a bonk is kind of what worked out for me.
What's something you think you did well on race day that helped you get to the finish?
I'm not sure like what one thing it was, but just being able to climb out of that hole, whether it was, I really don't know what one thing is what got me out of it. It was just kind of taking it one minute at a time, staying present, taking every small moment. And if a pickle is the only thing that sounds good, then eat a pickle. If it's an orange slice, that's the only thing that sounds good, eat an orange slice. And really just kind of relying on your crew. Like, they're there to help you, and let them help you. It's very much a team effort, and you're in it together. And I think my crew was great the whole time, but especially when I was really, really hurting, they were fantastic. Kind of knew not to say a ton to me when I was really, really in bad shape, but just kind of giving me all the options of stuff to drink, stuff to eat, and just trying different things until something works, I think is kind of what I was finally able to do. Is I tried a bunch of different stuff, and finally something clicked, and stuck with it for a little bit.
Oh, a good crew makes the world of difference. We actually just released an episode today. We're recording this on December 10th, and we had Ben Light, who's one of the known as one of the best crew people out there in the ultra world. We did a whole episode with him about crewing and pacing and how important that is. So yeah, when you have a good crew, it can literally make or break a race. Is what your crew being there and being able to give you what you need and to know what you need at the times that you need it. So, are you going to do another 100?
I knew this question was coming, and I knew something that a thought that popped into my head is, I remember I asked you, how long after your first 100 did you do your second? And you said it took you about 15 months to mentally recover.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how long. I'm not saying no. I'm not saying yes. I don't really know.
I like it.
Yeah. So we'll see. The fact that I'm not saying no immediately, I imagine I'll give it another shot.
Somewhere down the road. I like it because it's a huge commitment to train for 100. Like what you said, all those back-to-back runs. Boy, that's time consuming, and then the weekend going out, and you got to get, your crew all put together. It is a commitment, not only for you, but the people that are around you that are helping you and supporting you. So I like it. I'm not in that crowd that's like, you got to just do hundreds all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, yeah, you got to do them when it's right for you. And so I like that you're just seeing what comes at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Braden, this has been awesome hearing your story. It's you've shared so much valuable information. Before I let you go, though, I ask every guest, what would your top piece of advice be for someone who's looking to run their first 100-mile race?
I would say enjoy the pain of the effort because you earned it, and it shows how far you're willing to push yourself in your body. So enjoy the pain. It's a sign of what you've accomplished.
Oh yeah. No ibuprofen. Or else you're not enjoying it, right? Do it your way. But I think that is very wise words right there. Enjoy. If you don't enjoy the pain, then it's going to be a miserable experience, because there is a lot of pain that comes along with it. Yeah, but if you enjoy it and realize that you've earned that and that you're going to keep moving even though that pain's around, like it's empowering.
Yeah,
so
embrace
it. Yeah. Well, thank you, Braden, for coming on the show today. It's been great talking to you. Best of luck to you, and excited to keep in contact and see whatever the heck you do next.
Yeah, I'm so glad we crossed paths when we did during the race, and thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
So a big thank you goes out to Braden Mossbarger for joining me on the show. Man, did he have some great knowledge to share. I think if you are looking to run your first 100-mile race, I'd listen to that right there 2 or 3 times, because he shared tons of good insights that are crucial in finishing 100 miles. Now, as I think about my conversation with Braden, I always like to think about, okay, what's a takeaway that I had from this conversation? And my main takeaway was when Braden brought up about that one runner dropping back with him for 10 minutes just to talk with him when he was at his lowest of low points, and how that distraction of talking with him for that time period for 10 minutes, that's it, 10 minutes, really helped him give that sliver of light, as he said, and that's all he needed to help him to see something more, to keep him moving and have some hope that things can get better and I will get out of this and I will finish this race. And the reason I love that so much is it just goes to show what a little act of kindness, how it can change someone else's day, or, whatever it is, how it can impact someone else, a little act of kindness. And it just made me think about being a little more aware of the people around me, not only when you're running in the ultra world, but just in everyday life, to look around and to, talk to the people around us and be a little more aware of what they might be going through. Because if we just show a little bit of kindness towards them, we do not realize the impact that had. And that man, like Braden said, he might have got his name, might have not, can't remember, but he doesn't know who he is. But I'm sure he would love to reach out and thank him, and tell him how those 10 minutes saved his race. And so we really don't realize how far a kind action will go in this world. So Braden, thank you for sharing that with us, and all the other gold nuggets you shared along the way. And thank you to every single one of you guys for joining in on the podcast today. It is always an honor to have you here, to have you listening. When I see the downloads come in, I'm always blown away that that many people want to listen to my voice. Anyways, but it's an honor to have you, and I can't thank you enough for joining the show. And remember, guys, if you want to run 100 miles, make it happen.
Running 100 miles seems impossible, and maybe even kind of crazy. And it is, but we believe in big crazy dreams. That's why we ran 100 miles. It was such a life-changing experience for us, we decided to devote this podcast to preparing and inspiring you to run your first ultra race.
Are you ready to feel the highest highs and the lowest lows? Are you ready to do what you once thought was impossible? Are you ready for your trail to 100?